First and foremost, Professor, thank you so much for your time. I want you to know that I love you and I respect you so much. And yes, I highly appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much.
Today, I want us to talk about the American politics, okay? And I hope that we will help the expats to understand the American politics better, but in a simple way, okay? You know that I come from Europe, and in my opinion, everything is like super easy in Europe. It's straightforward. We have 44 sovereign countries and 27 in the European Union. And in the US, we have 50 states and only 2 global political parties, the Democrats and Republicans. Can you help me, please, to understand what these parties stand for?
Well, it's changing a lot. I mean, typically, the United States is one of the oldest republic systems. Of these parties have been around, the Democrats and Republicans, since the 1860s, since the Civil War. But in many ways, up until recently, it was pretty clear that the Republican Party usually was the rich and the elite population, and the Democrats were the more working class parties. Everything has changed now with globalization, and in many ways the rise of Trump. All right, which is why we wrote the book, The Trump Paradox, right? To try to explain why Trump now. What's going on in the world that is giving rise to this very new type of Republican Party. The Republican Party used to be a party of open trade and open migration, Ronald Reagan. Now it's become a party of tariffs, trade wars, and deportations, okay? Yeah. The question is why? What happened with the Republican Party? Well, a lot of it has to do with, I think that Donald Trump saw an opportunity to say that many people, white Americans, particularly white working class, was feeling that globalization was not helping them, right? That the benefits was all happening to rich cities, Silicon Valley, et cetera, and that the traditional white working class did not have the type of power it did when the 1950s, when racism was very strong and whites were highly protected. Now, so what I see happening is reality. And by the way, the same thing in Europe. Right, you're seeing the same types of things in Europe. You're getting reactions against immigrants, and you're getting reactions against trade, and so I think really what it is, it's
especially now, during the war in Ukraine, everywhere you go to the grocery store, you can see that it's written under the product like it's made in Russia. So subconsciously, what they want you to say, like, don't buy it. They're not saying don't buy it, but they're saying it's made in Russia.
So in the Ukraine.
In the Ukraine,
Ukraine, you see that, huh?
Yeah.
So even though there's a war, there's still trade.
Yes.
Well, see, the issue is, though, there's really, you have to think about it as the whole world is changing with globalization. What's changed? The change is that Europe and the United States, which used to be the only rich parts of the world, are now, along with other countries who are rising. Now, all of a sudden, China, you have some of the most beautiful cities in the world. The Chinese have risen economically out of huge poverty. Now you have massive middle class. Same thing happening in India. Same thing happening in Africa and Latin America. So sometimes I think Donald Trump said, well, whites, you should worry about this. And the Brexit people said, you should worry about the trade with the world. It's going to be against you. Well, and also immigration has increased. Why? Because the United States needs immigrants. They need us.
Yes.
I'm an immigrant. You're an immigrant. Yes. The reason the United States has grown economically for centuries is because of massive immigration.
But don't you think that Donald Trump is against immigration?
Yes, but why?
Why?
I think, frankly, this is what the book talks about. If you look at the reality of the United States, the areas that vote for Donald Trump, rural, poor areas, there are no immigrants. Why are you afraid of immigrants if they don't come there? There is no trade. There's no factories there. The factories are all in the big cities, and that's where all the trade is.
Yeah.
So, but he was able to fool them, to say, you need to be afraid of those immigrants. You need to be afraid of those foreign trade. The best way, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to build walls. I'm going to kick out immigrants. I'm going to make America white again. I'm going to make America great for what they think was great many years ago. But
And did you know that we are eating the dogs and we are eating the cats?
well, and what's unbelievable, it's
Yes.
so stupid.
It is.
It's so silly.
It is.
But then, he does that for a reason. What is the reason? He wants to scare people.
Yeah.
He wants to think the foreigner, foreign trade, the foreign immigrant, that's what you have to hate. All right? Trust me. Give me all the power, and I will protect you by being against them.
But protect from who? Look at us. You and I, we are immigrants, yes? I know what I can bring to the table. Yes, I'm a European woman. I have bachelor's degree, master's degree, postgraduate degree, PhD. Like, I know that I can contribute to this country, and I'm proud to be here in the US, but I don't like to hear this BS, what he is saying about us immigrants.
And I am a professor at UCLA, and I'm an immigrant who came here with a PhD and has worked at the White House, etc. And what my work, the research I do, is actually to quantify how incredibly important immigrants are for the U.S. economy.
Exactly.
In fact, if you add up all the income that immigrants like you and I and all the other immigrants actually generate for the economy of the United States, it's in the trillions of dollars. It would be the third largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
There's U.S., China, and immigrants.
Yeah.
Okay? They are incredibly productive for the world. By the way, if you kick out immigrants, which is what he's saying, mass deportations, it would be the biggest depression,
of course,
in the history of the world.
But do you believe in mass deportation, that he's able and capable of doing that?
I think he's capable of incredible evil. We saw this. When he was president, they were building they never built the wall. It was all so, but what they did do was grab families at the border and separate them. They took the kids away. 13,000 children were taken from their families and put in detention centers. I mean, it's crazy. What they're saying now, what he wants to do now is do what they did to the Japanese. Build huge internment camps. He wants to use the same law that they use against the Japanese to put them in camps. I mean, this is Nazi. This is and his father was a Nazi, okay? And his grandfather, they remember this stuff. They believe this stuff. It's unbelievable to think that somebody like that is now so close to the presidency. But the reason is, it's because the moment in history where the white society of the United States, right, and the United States itself was on top of the world. They thought they controlled everything. In the United States, if you were white and male, you had everything, okay? If you were the United States, you had everything in the world. But now it's more balanced.
Yeah.
And that scares some people, all right? There was a black man became president, Barack Obama. That scared traditional, and it's very interesting. It's certain types of lower educated people who feel that they are not automatically in control the way they used to feel by being a male white and that's what Donald Trump is based on. He's saying that's who's going to be great again. All right, it's very racist,
Yeah.
but it's also a very old story. The United States has always used anti-immigrants to in this way. In the 19th century, they were against the Chinese. Actually, before they were against the Polish, and before that they were against the Irish and the Italians. And when they first started, it was just the English against the Germans. Donald Trump was German. So this has always been this story in the United States of hating the immigrant as a way of creating political power. And what's interesting is that year after year, that was rejected.
Yeah.
And the United States did become great again and again, because it brought in more and more immigrants, generation after generation. And the United States, the future of the United States, like in California, is this big multicultural society that brings in the best and the brightest from all over the world.
Yes.
That should be the future of the United States.
Cheers to that. I love that, Professor. Yeah, that's exactly how I see the US and California in particular. All right. So coming back to my question.
Yeah.
How would you describe Republicans in 3 words?
MAGA, fooled again. Okay? Because there's no reason to have a mystery about what's going to happen if Donald Trump wins again. He already did things like attempt to do an insurrection, right? He already did things like mass deportations and trade wars. And that's all he's going to do is more of that, okay? And what's fascinating about it is that the only real support that he has is billionaires who think that they're going to get their taxes cut.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's great for billionaires like Elon Musk, who wants just more power and more power for himself. But, the reality of it is the man who just won the Nobel Prize, right? Very interesting economists, have shown the history of the world that the most prosperous nations of the world are actually the ones that are the most inclusive, that are actually focused on distribution of wealth so that more people get and to go forward. That's what created the United States after World War II. The great middle class that the Roosevelt administration, that Kennedy and Johnson built, right? And you can even say to a certain degree, Ronald Reagan focused on this notion of an open economy and immigration, by the way. That's interesting. The Republicans there, they welcome immigrants and brought in during the immigration reform of the 1980s. So, what's again, I think it's a problem that we're having at this moment in world history, where what I call it the great rebalancing, right? When Europe is not the only power in the world. Now they have to balance it out with everybody else. And that scares some people, all right? That gives opportunity for some populists to try to divide people, make them fearful, rather than hopeful
Exactly.
of how we can all build a better world together.
Exactly, by uniting, yes.
This is, and we are literally on the verge of an incredible moment in world history. Technologically, we can solve the problem of global warming, which is obvious. Look at these hurricanes. We are killing the planet. But guess what? We know technologically we can change it. We can save nature. We can work together with indigenous people to save the forests. We can create a sustainable and much more equitable, and that creates much greater prosperity for the entire planet. We can do this, right? But at this moment, though, we have to worry that the populist forces in Europe and in the United States are using this moment of radical change and to fearmonger and to grab power for themselves, which will only create a power for a small group of elites, increase the inequality gaps, increase the racial gaps, increase the gender gaps.
And hate between.
And the hate. Yeah. Look what they're doing to women. This is a very interesting thing, that the gap that's opened up between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on women, it's huge. And I think what's going to happen in this election is that you're going to see women coming out like never before.
Yes.
Young people who are awake, who are woke to the world, seeing that there has to be a better, more inclusive world, coming out, to vote. And this notion that, the strong man, which we have seen in Europe. We've seen many strong, Mussolini, Hitler, all these guys say, me, I'm the greatest of them all. And in the end, where did they end up, right?
Exactly, yes. Look at Putin.
And Putin. I mean,
okay, but today we don't want to talk about
Putin.
So, Professor, you've been teaching quite for a while at the UCLA now. How did teaching come into your life?
I always loved teaching, and I've always loved universities. So when and I went to universities obviously because what else? It's so beautiful to spend your life discovering, inquiring, dialoguing, right? In the middle of libraries with all the greatest knowledge of the world. That's for me. I was like, I never want to leave here. So, that's why I continued. But for me, the university was always a place to work, to plan, to go out and do things. So that's what I do. I go to the university, I teach my students, but then I go out and change the world. I go and work at the United Nations. I go work at the White House. I go work with governments all over the world. I go work with indigenous, poor immigrant communities all over the world. That's who needs our help.
And you're giving the interviews, educating people and helping them to understand American politics. Yes. Love that. And you've written a book.
Yes.
The Trump Paradox.
That's right.
What do you want your readers to take away from your book?
Well, what I put in the book, why a paradox?
Why a paradox?
Well, because this is it. Who supports Donald Trump? People from parts of the country who don't know what an immigrant is, but hate immigrants, who don't understand how to do international trade, but hate Chinese trade, even though they all need it, right? So there's a paradox that Donald Trump has strong support from those places that doesn't make any sense that they should be anti-immigrant or anti-trade. On the contrary, the paradox is that the best way to help rural communities, and is to actually open up the world, bring in more immigrants. You know who helps rural America? Immigrants.
Of course, yes.
They're the ones that do all the cooking. By the way, I made a movie. I'll show it to you right. I have it right up there. I made a movie called A Day Without a Mexican. Okay, we did it 15 years ago. And it was a movie, sort of like a comedy. What would happen to California if all the Mexicans disappeared? Well, guess what? It would be a disaster, right? There'd be no food. There'd be no restaurants. There'd be nobody constructing. And then in the end of the movie, they're like, please come back, right?
Trump is begging them with apology.
The white politicians who were anti-immigrant now want them back, right? Because that's the only way you make America great again after you destroy it with massive deportations. So that's the paradox, that people are not doing what's in their best interest, but rather they'd rather believe fake stories about what the problems are in the country. Immigrants are not the problem in this country. Immigrants are not eating the dogs and the cats, okay? It's a lie. But the paradox is that people love to believe that stuff. They love to hear it from somebody who says, I'm going to protect you. When in fact, he can't even protect himself, right? He's trying to help himself from going to jail. So this is a really serious moment. And again, we've been here many times before. Back to the Roman Empire, the Greek philosophers warned us against populists, people that knew how to lie, how to manipulate people's brains. And now we have a real problem because now we have AI and social media. That's what we're finding, that the people that really support him are actually the people that read the least, who are the least informed about things, that just read what the latest scroll is. And that's a serious danger because now AI is going to be able to perfect lies, to perfect the paradox.
Exactly. And you know what scares me personally? That people do not form their own beliefs by scrolling and what you just said. They're not like reading, they're not exploring, they're not listening to different perspective and form their own beliefs. That's what scares me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And AI, we actually have stupid artificial intelligence because it's not, it's not really making us more intelligent.
No.
It's not allowing us, it can, but that's not how we're using it. We could use AI as a tool, which I do, to help me discover new things, to try out new experiments, to try out new drugs and new astrophysical properties. Right now, all it's doing is regurgitating whatever makes us more mad is what shows up in our feed. Why? Because they want to sell us something. So they know that if rage, outrage, hate, these fear, these things attack a certain part of the brain that we have immediate reactions to. And then we continue to scroll and we continue. And the more we scroll, the more of that junk we get, because that's what the AI says. Oh, this is what's pushing the buttons. Let's give them more and more and more. All right. So we really have to. And by the way, that's what we're seeing now. I just wrote an article about that the growth of support for Donald Trump is again very focused with young people who are not going to college, who are not studying, who are dependent on social media, and who feel empowered with these macho notions that I'm going to fight, I'm going to kick people out, I'm going to build walls, and you know, and I think though increasingly more and more people, interestingly, thank you to women, are saying, wait a second, something is not right here, okay, you know, and it's again, what's fascinating about this is that women. I think they made a big mistake by going after women's rights and basically treating women like children. That we're going to tell you whether you can or cannot have an abortion. They're like, what are you talking about? It's my body.
It's my body. It's my decision. Who are you to tell me?
Exactly. That's a very basic, reaction. And I think that that's coming up too. And Kamala who, by the way, I've known her. Let me tell you, want to hear a great story?
Please,
I've known her for more than 40 years.
Oh my God, where did you meet her?
I met her because I was a professor at Stanford before I came here. And her father was a professor at Stanford. In fact, his office was right next to mine. And Donald Harris, right? So Donald, we would have lunch all the time. He said, come over to my house. I want to introduce you to my daughters. I said, okay. He says, yeah, I have this really, really smart daughter, but she wants to go to law school I said, well, that's great. No, she wants to become a prosecutor. And I'm like, what's wrong with that? He said, oh, come on. Because he was a big lefty. You should be a lawyer to be an advocate for the criminals and for the poor people and stuff. No, no, no. So I went to meet her and hi, Kamala. Hi. So, tell me, why do you want to be a prosecutor?
But why did he invite you? Because he wanted you to convince her not.
Yes. He thought I was good. That I was going to agree with him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second, Donald, listen to your daughter.
Yeah.
She has something interesting to say, because what we understood is that this was in the 1980s. This is during Ronald Reagan. She was an African-American woman, right? A black woman who was trying to break into law. And she's like, if I'm going to have to have respect.
Yes, and I assume 40 years ago, there were not so many women who are lawyers or prosecutors.
Prosecutors. So she says, I want to learn from the inside in order to change the system. And I said to Don, that's exactly, by the way, I was the same thing. I went to the University of Chicago, which is a very conservative school. They win all the Nobel Prizes, very smart people, but very conservative school. I'm not a conservative, but I went there to learn conservative thinking so that I could argue Republican better than Republicans, okay?
Wow.
And I told Don that, Don, that's what I did. That's what your daughter is doing. She's going in to learn how the system works from the inside to be able to really change it. And right, yeah, that's right. And I said, okay, but why, Kamala? Why do you want to do that? Is it that you want to be a president of the United States?
Did you ask her this question?
And she said, how did you know that? Ha 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 ha. I'll show you. I have pictures all over.
Oh my God. I trust you, but
I kept in touch with her all these years when she was Attorney General of California. I worked with her in her campaign. When she was running for the Senate, I worked with her in her campaign. And let me tell you something. I worked with many, many politicians. I have all my photographs there with Hillary and Bill and Obama. She was the toughest. She actually would sit me down, I'm your advisor, okay, and grill me, make me explain really in detail things. I'm very, 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 very impressed with her. So again, that she understood that to change America, you needed to understand the paradox of America. You needed to understand the nature of the contradictions that creates and reproduces injustice. It's not just a matter of arguing your point of view. It's also being able to understand the other point of view and be able to transform thinking in that. I think she's going to be an incredible president.
I believe you. No, honestly, I do. And I trust her, not only because I'm a woman, but I trust her. When I listen to Trump, we have this inner feeling and, in our gut, we feel like, I don't trust him, something like that. Especially we women, like we know.
We know, right?
We know. We have this like intuition. Anyways, I see your stance. I know that you will vote for Kamala, and you believe that she will change America in a good way. Yeah. And what are your personal aspirations and hope for the future of the United States?
Well, I'm very focused on the next 30 years for the planet. Okay, we have the next 30 years are probably the last chance that we have to solve a global climate poverty crisis. Right, so we need to not only stop global warming, okay, and reduce carbon emissions, but we need to do it in a way that is fair and inclusive of all workers, that everybody can afford an electric vehicle, that everybody can afford renewable energy, not only in rich countries, but in poor countries, because that's where all the growth of the world is going to happen. All the growth is going to occur in countries that are poorer than here. So we have to make sure that the future is more inclusive. Women, many women, billions of them are coming into the workforce who need better training, who can then contribute better, become better consumers, and they can't consume the same way that we've consumed for the last 30 years, because that's wasteful, polluting, and it will destroy the planet. So we have to roll up our sleeves, change the technology of the planet, invest in new technologies, invest in people, invest in women, invest in indigenous people. Immigrants are a big part of this story. Immigrants that come here, and by the way, when they come here, what do? They send money back home.
That's true. That's what I do.
Do you? Do you?
Of course, yes.
Okay, perfect. Do you know all the immigrants around the world send more money back to their homes than all the multinational corporations combined, than all the World Bank, than all the foreign aid? Yes, immigrants do more benefit to solve the problems of the roots of poverty than anybody else on the planet. Rather than putting immigrants in detention centers and splitting their families and throwing them out, which our studies show will be the biggest depression in the history of the world, if we do what Ronald Reagan did, incorporate immigrants, give them legal papers, let them get rich.
Yes.
Let them get rich right here.
Yeah.
That will get better economic returns for everybody.
Yes.
When immigrants get rich, we all get rich.
Yes. Wow, love that.
Right.
Like
so, but Donald Trump thinks in zero sum terms. No, if an immigrant get riches, that's not good for you. That's not true.
Yeah.
On the contrary, that immigrant is creating more jobs for everybody.
Exactly.
Who can therefore buy more things.
So
that immigrant will take care of you when you're old.
Yeah.
That immigrant will buy your house when you want to retire.
Wow. Yes. And you mentioned about saving the planet. Yes, this is your agenda for the next 30 years. But Professor, in your opinion, how can we contribute, individually? What can I do to make this planet better and cleaner? You mentioned the electric vehicle. I bought one.
All right. Good for you. Good for you. Not a Tesla, I hope, but anyway.
Tesla.
Okay.
Okay, we should talk about Elon Musk then as well.
Okay.
Why not Tesla? You don't like
Well, Tesla's fine. I mean, Elon Musk, I cannot believe, I've known him also. I met him at Stanford and his brother, because we all were in the same technology space in payments. And I admired him a great deal. But I can't believe what he's saying these days. He knows he's spreading lies. He's now he learned from Donald Trump the power of the lie. He bought Twitter and X because he realized that lies have incredible power, and what he wants is power now. Now that he has wealth,
really? Do you think so?
Oh, absolutely.
And okay, let's just imagine that Elon Musk will run for the office. Would you vote for him?
No, but he won't run for office.
Why?
Because he knows he's too clumsy and can't speak, and people don't, but what he prefers to just buy the politician. So he is right now buying Donald Trump, and now it worked. He has now made Donald Trump a tool of his, just like he bought Twitter, just like he bought Tesla. He didn't invent Tesla, by the way. He took over that company, all right? Most of these companies, he's taken them over, all right? And then uses them, all right? That's what he's doing with Donald Trump. So, and that's what he prefers, to just use these individuals for his own power, all right? Well, the real problem is, and it's a shame. I mean, I come from Silicon Valley. I mean, I taught at Stanford. I taught at Berkeley. I've created technology companies in the Bay Area. I have one right now in the Bay Area that does technology for remittances for poor people around the world at the lowest possible cost. All right? Some people like to do that. Some people don't. Apple decided, no. I met Steve Jobs too, and he said, no, I'm not going to make phones for the poorest people. I'm going to make phones for the richest people because that's how I make more money, and then I have more money to invest. He told me that story, all right? And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting because I said, the internet, we could solve poverty. And a lot of the people who are billionaires now say, no. My job is to actually make more money. Okay, that's one way of looking at the world. But if we combine the technology of Silicon Valley, which is what I was hoping Elon Musk will do, and I think, frankly, after Trump loses, he's going to need to go with somebody else. And he'll eventually come back and do something positive, I hope.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe I'm mistaken, that his life might change after Trump loses, right? Because so many people have so much respect and love towards him. And after him being involved so deeply in politics, he can change his reputation. Don't you think so? Yeah. And it's what you just said, that you met him many years ago, and now you have a different look.
Keep hope alive, okay? Yeah. We will hope.
That's sad.
I actually think that there is a role for billionaires and big capital. Okay, even though I'm very progressive and I'm for the working class and immigrants, I do believe we can work with billionaires in a positive way. We need them to invest in ways and technologies that actually bring up the middle classes, because they got all the money. We have to change Wall Street. We have to change the billionaire banks. We're not going to eliminate them, but we have to make them, and many of them want to. I mean, some of the biggest companies in the world, like BlackRock, they claim that that's their goal. A lot of companies want to say that they are doing good for the planet. A lot of them don't know how to do that, right? That's what we need. We need people to go into universities, work and change the companies, change the government structures to create the incentives for governments and companies to work together to solve problems. I think, in certain parts of the world, that does work, and it is. In those countries where they only care about billionaires and the wealth of billionaires, they don't survive very long. And in fact, those fail eventually.
Yes, Mother Teresa once said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And I agree with her, but I also believe that we should start with ourselves, meaning work on ourselves, our skills development, etc., and contributing to this planet Earth. So let's come back to my question. How can we start? What can we do? Electric vehicles. Okay, what else? Education.
Get involved with communities and help change communities to create a better life for them. We need better housing. We need better education. We need better healthcare. One thing I'm doing right now, I'm working with communities, what I call frontline communities that are facing real problems. Like in Wilmington, California, right here down here, there's a community that is surrounded by 5 refineries. Okay, everybody has cancer. Okay, even the dogs have cancer. Okay, we need to work with those communities, the ones that are most at risk, help them, empower them, get involved politically. This election is an incredible opportunity to get people involved and do things for positive change. And in many ways, I mean, Kamala Harris is a unique individual. I mean, she is an immigrant. She comes from the immigrant background. both her parents were immigrants. She grew up in that world. But interestingly enough, she also grew up in the United States and was able to say, you know what? This is a really beautiful country if you think about it. If we can include everybody, if it can empower everybody, that's what, we need to do.
Yeah.
We need to commit ourselves to that vision of a more inclusive, of greater equitable distribution for everybody, to raise everybody. That's going to change the world for the better. And it's going to do it at a multiple rates. All right. We're not just helping ourselves, we're helping ourselves be better. And the more we're all better, we create dramatic positive change for the whole planet.
I love that. Thank you so much, Professor. Let's clarify one simple thing, that we are not brainwashing and we are not telling people what to do and how to live their lives. We are just showing a different perspective.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And
That's right.
Make your own assumptions and your own beliefs, form them, educate yourself. How else would you want to sum up our
Well, like Taylor Swift says, right?
Oh, do you like Taylor Swift?
Oh, of course, of course. Do your research. Yeah. Do your research. Don't get fooled.
Exactly.
Keep your, as you said, that instinct going,
yes.
and be honest with your good instincts.
Yes.
Okay, be virtuous, meditate, meditate inward, connect with that feeling of you wanting to be a better person, of you wanting to make a better world. It's right there.
Yes.
It's in each of us. Respect that and look for it in everybody, even if you disagree with them, even if I meet MAGA people all the time, okay? And I make it a point to be friends with them, okay? And to break through the stuff. And then then you'll find, oh, wow, okay, then I can have a conversation. Maybe I convince them of something that I've learned that they can understand too.
Yes, you are showing them the different perspective, right? So yes, and I strongly believe that people don't allow the society to convince you in their beliefs. From your own beliefs, trust yourself and trust your gut and your intuition. And as you said, meditate.
Yes.
Only this way you can separate the noise from the reality. And the reality is like what you feel and how your body responds. So thank you so much, Professor, for a different perspective, for your time, and for your expertise. I'm looking forward to reading your book. By the way, where can we find it?
You can buy it on Amazon.
Amazon, of course.
Jeff Bezos, okay. or go to your independent bookstore, okay? It's University of California Press.
Thank you so much.
And watch the movie A Day Without a Mexican.
Where can we find the movie?
Look it up on Google.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Google. Thank you so much, Professor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.